August 20th, 1966. A young boy is flying a kite on the slopes of Vintém Hill in Niterói, Brazil. The wind is high, the grass is thick, and the air smells of salt and rot. As the boy treks through the brush to retrieve his kite, he finds them. Two men, lying side by side, dressed as if they were going to a business meeting, formal suits, pressed shirts, and heavy waterproof raincoats. There are no signs of a struggle, no blood, no footprints. But as the boy gets closer, he sees the horror. Resting on the bridges of their noses are two crude, handmade masks cut from sheets of heavy lead. They were waiting for a signal. They had followed a set of coded instructions. They had swallowed the capsules, and whatever they met on that hill didn't want them to leave it alive. Welcome back to Grim Lore. Today, we investigate one of the most bizarre cold cases in history, the lead masks of Vintém Hill. To understand the end, we have to look at the beginning. Manoel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana were not occultists. They weren't hermits. They were simple electronic technicians from Nova Friburgo. They were fathers. They were husbands. On the morning of August 17th, they told their wives they were heading to Sao Paulo to buy components for their shop. They had a large sum of money with them, about 2.3 million cruceros. They boarded a bus, but they didn't go to Sao Paulo. Instead, they arrived in Niterói at 2:30 p.m. The rain was beginning to fall. They stopped at a local store. They didn't buy transistors or wires. They bought two identical waterproof raincoats. Then they stopped at a bar. The waitress there would later tell police that Miguel seemed incredibly nervous. He kept checking his watch. It was a race against time. They bought a single bottle of mineral water. They kept the receipt, a small slip of paper that would become a piece of evidence in a puzzle that had no solution. Witnesses say they then headed toward Vintém Hill, a steep, difficult climb. Why would two men in formal suits carrying a large amount of cash hike into the muddy wilderness during a rainstorm? They weren't hiking, they were keeping an appointment. When the bodies were found 3 days later, the police were baffled. The money was still there. This wasn't a robbery. Their internal organs showed no obvious signs of trauma. But it was the items found next to them that turned this from a death into a mystery. Beside the bodies lay the empty water bottle and a small notebook. Inside that notebook were instructions written in a cold, clinical hand. 16:30, be at the agreed place. 18:30, swallow the capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for the mask signal. Protect metals. This is a phrase that has haunted investigators for 60 years. In the world of 1960s electronics, lead was used to shield against radiation. The masks they wore were handmade, crudely cut by hand tools. They were designed to protect the eyes from something, a flash, a beam, or a light so bright it could blind a man. But what about the capsules? When the coroner performed the autopsy, he faced a wall of silence. The internal organs of Manoel and Miguel were so badly decomposed that a toxicology report was impossible. The police forgot to preserve the samples. By the time they realized they needed to check for poison, the evidence had literally rotted away. The capsules remain a mystery. Were they a psychedelic drug meant to open their minds to another dimension? Or were they a poison fed to them by someone they trusted? While the police looked for poison, the townspeople were looking at the sky. On the night of August 17th, the night the men died, a local woman named Gracinda Barbosa Coutinho de Souza was driving past the hill with her children. She stopped the car in shock. High above Vintém Hill, she saw a round, orange, glowing object. It wasn't a plane, it wasn't a star. She described it as having a rim of fire hovering directly over the spot where the bodies would later be found. Was this the signal the men were waiting for? There is a subculture of spiritist groups in Brazil that, in the 1960s, believed they could communicate with extraterrestrials or spirits using electronic equipment. Manoel and Miguel were technicians. They built radios. They understood frequencies. Did they believe they had built a way to talk to the beyond? Did they think the lead masks would protect them from the radiation of an alien craft? If so, they were tragically wrong. If the signal was the orange orb, it didn't bring enlightenment. It brought a silent, invisible death. Years later, a friend of the men, known as Elcio, was arrested. He was a fellow electronics enthusiast who claimed they were all part of a group trying to contact Mars. He admitted they had conducted similar experiments before. But Elcio was never charged with their murder. There was no proof. The lead masks case remains a haunting reminder of what happens when the logic of science meets the madness of the occult. Two men went up a hill looking for the future, armed only with handmade lead and a bottle of water. They died, waiting for a sign that may have actually appeared, only to kill them where they lay. To this day, the Vintém Hill is quiet. But if you stand in the tall grass at 6:30 p.m., you might still feel the shadow of the men who swallowed the capsules and waited for a light that never intended to save them. Next time on Grim Lore, we go from the hills of Brazil to the cold vacuum of space, where the screams of the lost cosmonauts still echo in the static. I'm your narrator, and remember, the shadows always have a voice. Don't forget to subscribe to the lore.